sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
Today, I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa! Everybody got opinions.
Well, I haven't reacted to that intro in a while, at least it seems. Patrick Wheeler back on the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Maybe, just maybe, there are a few of you who were the avid Robert Allen and Friends show listeners who said, you know what, that Patrick guy, kind of interesting. He might be worth checking out on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Hopefully that's the case, because I am back. After 4 days on Robert's show, and I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun. A lot of good guests. I had a lot of good guests. Go down the list of all those guys that got to join me, and we talked about a ton. I think it, too, was a little bit of a switch-up from what's normally on Robert's show. I mean, we dug deep. It just so happened to be during a time where a lot of crazy topics were coming through the sports world, and we dove into everything. Didn't hold anything back and got into a lot of conversation, a lot of interaction, and I think it was just great all around. I mean, the experience was fun. The interaction was fun. The discussion was well worth it. It was great. So if you listened in, appreciate it. If you were a part of it, appreciate it. Now you get me back here. Jason Elmquist, I believe, joining sometime here soon. I'll be holding it down till then. Here's the thing. When it comes to Oklahoma State recruiting, how long ago was it now? I mean, it's been maybe a month now. We had like 6 recruits in 5 days, something like that. It was just like off the charts, back-to-back, bang, 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 recruits coming into Oklahoma State football. And it was just, cause for celebration. Like, we got this done. They were solid recruits, wide receivers, off the charts wide receivers, some of these guys, looking really good, solidifying that position. Well, and then the last couple of days, you get 2 decommits, one from the 2021 class and one from the 22 class. So the good news that comes in today is a new commit for the 21 class, and yeah, you already heard about it. Put in the sports report. Another wide receiver. This time it's John Paul Richardson. His dad, Bucky, of course, played at Texas A&M. He's the 4th wide receiver in this 21 class. And we had him on. He was on Robert's show today and said, you know what, Oklahoma State, that just felt like home. Got a chance to see the campus, and it just really felt like home. The best part about it was him describing the phone call he got got a text message from Mike Gundy. Said, hey, this is Mike Gundy, give me a call. And he said he was like, oh, yeah, here we go. That was pretty cool to hear. Imagine a high school kid get a Power 5 coach texting you like that and say, give me a call, I want to talk to you about something. Ooh, yeah. That's a good feeling, I'm sure. So he joins Bryson Green, Blaine Green, the Green twins there. Jaden Bray as well. 4 solid receivers. There's going to be a lot leaving, we know that. After this year, Tylan Wallace, Landon Wolf, Dylan Stoner, D. Anderson. Plus, that's not even to mention those receivers that had transferred out earlier this season. That was, C.J. Moore. He was a 4-star. So, you got to give OSU credit. They've done a good job of filling in these positions. They know it was one spot they were going to be pretty thin at after this year, not just because of losing players, but the players they were losing. Some of the names of those guys. It's going to be tough to fill in the Tylan Wallace position. We all know that. Landon Wolf, too, Dylan Stoner, but the Green twins, who are insanely athletic. And then you've got John Paul Richardson, really good option route runner. Can do a lot of things. Quick, very quick. Runs track as well. And then Missouri City right now. another Texas recruit. So that's solid. It's a good pickup for Oklahoma State. They needed that news after the couple of decommits, which I know, as I said on the Robert Allen Friend Show the other day, guess what? There's going to be this immediate reaction. I think there was a little bit, and there was definitely concern from some of the fans around this area. Well, we've already seen 2 decommits. And the initial response, which I don't blame the initial response from a lot of people, is that's got to be dealing with the whole Mike Gundy and Chuba Hubbard situation, everything that went down this offseason, Oklahoma State football. We all talked about it. Would there be issues in recruiting? But I got to say this, for instance, with the lineman, with Kelvin Banks, as Jason joins me now, with Kelvin Banks, for him at least, I went out and said, look, I don't think it was the Mike Gundy thing. He committed as a sophomore, okay? Pretty young to commit. This next year, he gets an offer from a bunch of other schools, including Auburn and LSU. I mean, to me, that makes about as much sense as anything, right? You're going to get the previous national champion saying, come play for us, which, I mean, I'd be like, well, I might be decommitting from wherever else I was, right? Does that make more sense to you than the whole...
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing, though, is no matter what, right or wrong, it's going to be part of the narrative, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was it happened. That's something that... Gundy and OSU athletics are going to have to deal with. I mean, because that's the thing is, we talked about it back when Mike Boynton had an availability. He said that he had even been experiencing it in his recruiting. So that's the thing is, right or wrong, it's going to be part of the narrative. We're not going to. I don't think we're ever going to find out definitively if these 2 that backed out of their commitments, if it is because of that. I don't think we're ever going to find that out. But I think, right or wrong, some people are going to consider it probably part of the situation of why these guys back
they
out.
will for sure, but just for instance, for like I said, the lineman one, I get with Kelvin. I mean, I understand why that's going to happen. This latest one, as of today, with Kobe Fields, 3-star linebacker. I mean, that's the thing, we don't know. We haven't heard this. It's just been this, nice generic, well, I got to do what's best for me and my family. Which,
right.
I mean, get that, and I understand it.
Well, and I think what's also going to lead to that narrative is if you actually look and you find out that, okay, both of these guys were black athletes. So then I think a lot of people
the
then
fuel
instantly
to the fire's there, no doubt.
Yeah, so I think at that point, then people start wondering, is it because of the whole OAN T-shirt situation?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to put, at least in my mind, I wanted to put the Kelvin Banks situation to rest. Now again, he could go to LSU, he could go to Auburn.
Oh yeah, he's got a great list of other offers. Well,
yeah, and there could be anyone at that university in the media that comes up and goes, "Hey, why'd you decommit from OSU? Let's be real." And he's like, you know what? I'm not part of him. I can say whatever I want now about him, and maybe he lets us know. But until then, I'm going to say that probably didn't have a ton to do with it. Again, just speculating on my side, but that's what I thought. The good news today, as I just said with the intro, is John Paul Richardson committing. He's the 4th wide receiver already in this class, as we know is going to be a pretty thin position after this year, but they've already filled it up with some solid commits. This time a 3-star wide receiver out of Missouri City, Texas. They've done a great job of getting these wide receivers. Yeah. And I said earlier, filling a spot where Tylan Wallace is going to be, you almost want 2 or 3 guys just to fill in that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. I've said for years is the one position that you're not going to worry about as long as he's here is the wide receiver position. You're not going to worry about what the recruiting looks like. Even if several of these guys that have committed were to back out of their commitments before signing day, you still feel comfortable that whoever Casey Dunn was able to chase down would still fit well and would develop because he's got a proven track record. I mean, the guys that he's had as Biletnikoff finalists weren't your 4 or 5 star type of recruits. So I mean, he's developing these 3 stars out of Podunk, Texas. So yeah, I again, when it comes to wide receivers, it's just, and maybe some of it helps the fact that, again, you mentioned you have 4 wide receivers, so you would hope at least one of them hits. Yeah. And if one of them hits, and then you're set for a few years. But that's the thing is, like, if you look at it, most of the recruiting classes that he's had, I mean, you go back, because that's the thing people forget about. At this point, you go back to Mason Rudolph's final year, the wide receivers at the time you had essentially 4 guys who are going to be on NFL rosters. 3 guys who currently are. You had James Washington. You had Marcel Aitman, Chris Lacey, who's now with the Lions. And then everyone's forgetting Tylan Wallace was a freshman. He played 1 or 2 games then. It had a great, I mean, diehard fans will remember that amazing catch that he had in when Corndog went in as quarterback late in the Pittsburgh game. And at that point, you're like, that's your next superstar.
Yeah.
And most people just saw it then. And that's, I mean, and again, he was a freshman who wasn't even playing at that point. So when this wave of guys graduate at the wide receiver core, you're just sitting back waiting and saying, okay, who's the next on the line? Because that's how it's been with Casey Dunn.
I think there's potential for the Green Twins to be special. I mean, really. They've shown them crazy athletic. But if they can mesh together, how much time they get on the field together will be seen. But I think they have the chance to be the breakout.
Well, and I'm going to be interested. There's a lot of expectations for Langston Anderson because when I talked to Casey Dunn last summer, the past 2 summers when we've had availability with him, I've asked who's the next this person, and he openly said Tylan Wallace is going to be the next James Washington. The before the year that Tylan Wallace was a Political finalist. So I asked him last year, who's going to be the next Tylan Wallace / next James Washington, and he said Langston Anderson's that guy. So there's and this was before he even this was before Langston Anderson even got on campus. Because he didn't show up until the fall. That's what he's expecting from Langston Anderson. So I'm going to be interested to see what they get from him this year because I think he's going to be maybe slightly more involved because you don't have that 4-game window. It's like if you're going to use him, you might as well use him now because you have to. But I think, according to Casey Dunn, he's kind of your next superstar in waiting.
Yeah, so definitely, like I kind of said there too, we had that explosion of recruits in a short number of days there, and it's been silent for a little bit until these 2 decommits, and then today with John Paul Richardson hopping on the train as well for next year. Again, that's made me think too, because when he was on earlier, it made me think, these guys in this type of season that they hope, I mean, this is such a weird spot for them because they have to hope, first of all, that they can have a season. There's been a lot of talk of this. All of a sudden now it's high school football. Will we even have that? There was a talk in somewhere in Dallas, around the Dallas area. They were like, we don't know if we're gonna have high school football. And in Texas, everyone was like, high school football in Texas might not happen. Is that really what I just heard? I remember hearing that too. And I was like, what? Yeah. What? Come again? So these guys, that's the thing we've talked about with baseball players, but with football too. Some of these dudes that are on the fence when it comes to proving themselves in junior or senior years and getting a chance to go somewhere.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit yesterday in the second hour, and just the impact that it's going to have with recruiting for college as well.
Oh yeah,
and now also the fact that officially was we voted on the fact that junior college is switching to a spring football slate. Yeah, that's also going to impact recruiting because I mean you have Oklahoma State is the past few years has had 1 or 2 JUCO guys come in. Some programs like Kansas are more reliable on junior college kids, and that's going to impact those types of programs as well. So I mean, and I've said this for last week when I heard Dallas, the Dallas superintendent quotes about he doesn't see how they're going to have fall football and stuff like that. This is going to have if there's no fall football. This is going to have a impact for several years.
Oh yeah,
not just this season and the immediate future of the budgets and stuff like that. When you don't have, because I mentioned it yesterday, is if Tylan Wallace didn't have that breakout year, would anyone have picked on him? Would Casey have Dunn spotted him and said, "Hey, we want him"? If had he not had that opportunity, well, that's what we're going to find out. Is there's some athletes who aren't going to get that breakout year if there's no sports this fall, and it's going to come down to who spots the talent early enough to say, okay, even though he didn't play this year, I thought this one play as a sophomore when he was the 3rd string, 4th string wide receiver was enough to make me say that once he gets the opportunity to be number 1 wide receiver, then he's going to break out.
Yeah, the ability to recruit is going to be amplified. It already has been but still trying to find guys that, as you said, hope that they can hit. Well, now you're in even a tougher position, probably an unprecedented spot too for a lot of these guys. When we come back, you and I haven't really had a chance to talk together yet about the whole, Big Ten, what they decided to do, Pac-12. The ACC hasn't officially made an announcement yet. That's interesting to me because of the ACC, SEC non-conference, as we know, games that are scheduled, big games. We can name that, and a lot of them too. I think about in-state games too. They've mentioned travel being one of the issues they're claiming is such a big deal with this. I'm curious as to if the ACC will actually join now when you look more at some of these in-state games with the SEC. And we'll talk about what the Big 12 might do as well. We will hit on all that. Also, later on in the show, Chris Jones, the Kansas City Chiefs, did he finally get something done? We know that the deadline is tomorrow. And today's a big day for some NFL players. Even tomorrow could be a big day for some NFL players. We'll talk about Chris Jones and many more that have a chance to get some big money and stay with some teams. We'll talk about all that still to come on the Afternoon Sports Drive next.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. You have it, but you take it how you left it. It's a give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the play.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you. Haven't said that in a while. It's been like a week, basically, a little over since I've been on the show. And I know that you guys are, Jason, you had a number of different guys on with you, didn't you? You had Jordan was on yesterday, and
had Jordan
Jimmy
for an hour, and Jimmy for the second hour.
Okay.
Friday we had Carson leading off, and then closing out the show was Trey Cobb, which we had some marital discussions as well. He tweeted out last week a poll asking, do you put your leftovers, leave them in the box that they come in, or put them in Tupperware?
Okay.
And apparently that's a debate between he and his wife, and apparently when I brought it up, his wife happened to poke her head in and glared at him while we were discussing it. But I was able to help them meet hopefully a mutual ground, because he was talking about how, like, right now their big Tupperware is for the baby formula, so they're having to put like one slice into each Tupperware and then stack them all into the fridge. I was like, I understand with pizza, because the pizza box is a little bit big, bulky and whatnot. I was like, my wife and I, we just put our pizza in Ziploc bags, and he goes, oh, that's a game changer. so we had some spousal improvement being made here as well on our show.
It reminds me of the Bachelor fridge that we've all rocked before, that I still do a lot. You open, if a female were to open your fridge, she'd be like, what in the world is this? Because there's like an expired thing of some condiment, and there's probably some beers and a couple of leftover boxes, right?
When I started dating my now wife, I actually only had one plate, one fork, one spoon, one knife, because I was like, again, I was living by myself when I first started living here, and I'm like, I don't want to have to, deal with the whole dishwasher or washing dishes. I just wash a dish when I need it. The one, and I just I literally only had one plate, one spoon, one fork, one bowl. That was it.
Hey man,
and now my wife, since we got married, we have like 3 different sets, and I'm just like, I could literally just get by with just one. That'd be good.
Us men know how to live simple. Okay, we can get by with what we have, even if that means reusing. I love it. I don't know if I've heard of that one. One plate, one. Wow. Hey, at least you were consistent and got it done. It still worked out. It's pretty great.
Well, then you don't have stuff piling up.
Well, no, it makes sense from logistically.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're living solo, you don't need 6 plates.
No, I mean, you're right. They don't get used, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just sit there and do. I mean, everything's a plate in a lot of ways, anyways, for some guys, right? So I mean, seriously, there's good arguments.
If you have napkins and paper towels, you only need one.
You're
one
solid.
plate.
You're solid. I love it. Hey man, we didn't really get a chance to talk. I think it was the first. It might have been the first or second show I wasn't with you that you guys kind of got to break the news with the Big Ten, talking about no non-conference games. Well, then, as we all know, the Pac-12 did the classic Friday night news dump and announced the same thing. The ACC, I think there was at least
Pac-12 though had quite the news dump though Friday, because after the initial news, then we find out
Larry
that
Scott,
we find out the commissioner also tested positive.
Right.
I'm like, man, burying the lead on the Friday night news dump as well.
They dumped it all and a little bit more. And then the ACC was initially, the report was, well, they plan on coming out and doing the same thing. And that did kind of get me thinking, because we've talked about the whole non-conference games being the ones that are getting chopped off. Think about these ACC and these SEC, not only non-conference games, but the ones that are in-state, okay? Now, if they go that route, it does make you question, at least it makes me question a little bit, okay, but let's look at, for instance, some of the distances that we'd be traveling here. Kind of the same way with the Big Ten. I brought it up initially. My initial response, and still is kind of, I think the Big Ten jumped the gun a bit. I think the Pac-12 probably did a little bit too. On top of that, when you look at some of the games that they're ending up not having, well, the travel is actually a lot farther in some of these conference games than it is for that. So then that makes me question the whole travel thing a little bit.
I think ultimately, I think it was two reasons that the Big Ten made the decision already. I think first and foremost is the fact that Ohio State shutting down their football for 2 weeks.
That probably honestly sent a scare through the whole conference.
Because think of it this way. I mean, that's your flagship program.
Right.
They have to start practicing by NCAA mandate by August 1, and with shutting down for 2 weeks, they're only going to have basically an 8-day window to retest, make sure everyone's fine.
Were there some comments coming out from them too? The university, the president or AD said, I just don't know if we're going to have it or how we're going to have it. Yeah.
So, I mean, your flagship program is already shortening its window of when it's going to be available to actually start practicing and all that stuff. I think the other thing is, I saw a tweet that I totally agree with, and why I think we're going to see more. I think ultimately most conferences will cancel, if possible, non-conference, is if Ohio State and Michigan are finding out that they're not even going to get to have a half full stadium. Let's say okay, we'll let some fans in, but a quarter of them. You're not making up the $2 million that you're giving out to Akron or whatever podunk FBS program that you brought in to make money. You were spending $2 million to bring them in, but you knew you were going to be making $6 million that weekend. Well, if you know that you're not even going to break even, why bring those teams in? So it makes sense from a monetary. So I think their decision right now was more money based than we don't know about. It's like if you don't think you're going to have a full stadium, if you think that's where your local government's trending, then cancel it now. And
look, I brought in Aaron Torres last week a couple times from Fox, and he talked about the same thing. Said, look, from a money standpoint, that would make sense. You've got to cut costs somewhere. How about the couple of $1 million that you save by not playing these no-name teams? At the same time, that's what makes me question this whole, we as the Big Ten, as the Pac-12, you have to come out and make it at least seem from their perspective that this is all about a health thing. But, the health of our student athletes, the health of everybody around. When if you're being honest, let's dig a little deeper like you just did. Is it probably more of a money thing? Yeah, I'm sure it really is. I mean, we're going to put that smoke and mirrors, because we've gone through over and over when it comes to college football players that they're going to be fine for the most part. Okay, we can go out and say that now. There's the occasional, you're going to have your outlier situations. You don't want any of them to get it, but the ones that have flown through for the most part and all that. Here's the thing it kind of gets me with the ACC and SEC. Let me name you these games that would be in jeopardy. Okay, if the ACC says no non-conference games. Florida State, Louisville, Kentucky, Georgia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina. Okay, those are all pretty solid games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe about 10, 15 years ago. Now it's a case where one program in that it just seems kind of to be the mediocre of them. Again, Clemson's going to roll. Georgia's going to roll. Louisville should roll. And
see, that's the one I kind of question a little bit. Kentucky has been there a little. They're on the rise a little bit.
Yeah, but then it seems like it looks like they're trending that way, and then suddenly they plummet back to being, a 5-17.
Which, and regardless, from a name state here, okay, who they are, this would draw a lot of viewers. These games would draw a lot of viewers, I think, especially with no fans.
I think in state, I wouldn't watch any. I'd much rather watch your marquee, your Alabama LSU than watching. I mean, Florida State might be the closest one I'd be consider, but Florida State hasn't been much, the past few years as well. And Florida's one of those teams where you're not sure if they're just a benefactor of being in the worst of the SEC divisions.
I also throw in the unconventionalness, is that a word? Unconventional ways of the season right now, okay, this offseason, which kind of to me leaves, yes, there's going to be some programs that still probably will dominate just because talent, but I think there's a little bit of a window for almost at some point anything can happen with some of these games, okay? We may see the upset that we never thought we'd see, maybe even in some of these games I mentioned, simply because the preparation has been different, and
right.
It will be for a lot of these teams.
And for all we know, that could have been another factor in why Big Ten and Pac-12, because we know how razor thin it is to get in the college football playoffs. And if you think that just because of being out of your routine could impact losing one of those 3 non-conference games, which would then send you completely out of the landscape of the college football playoffs, maybe that's, ultimately as an AD, you might be looking at something like that.
I asked Aaron, and I'll ask you, if he would be upset or he'd be totally fine with simply a Big 12 SEC football season. And he's like, that wouldn't really bother me, to be completely honest. And
Yeah.
I think even for those diehard Big 10, ACC, SEC, or Pac-12 fans, if it came down to it and it was the Big 12 and the SEC that said we're going to play and they're the only two that play, like, wouldn't be crazy bad idea.
Here's the fascinating thing, though, is we're talking about those two conferences, but also the height of this new wave of COVID-19 is kind of centralized around those conference states right now.
It is,
so
it's
like are they going to sacrifice health and whatnot? And that's the interesting thing. And I thought it was a great comment from the Iowa State AD yesterday. Is here's we're being transparent. This is why we need athletics. But he also said we're also factoring in health. We don't want to. He kind of, it was almost the complete opposite of Gundy. We need the economy, but we don't want to sacrifice these players' healths to be able to do this. Is almost kind of what it came off as. Where Gundy, it was we'll throw them out there. They'll be fine. They'll be herd immunity, and because we need the money. That's what the AD comes off a little bit better because he took that approach of. This is why we need it. Because I think the big thing was the $40 million over the next 6 months if you don't have football.
Yeah, let's look at that here for a second. The first part, with Gundy, still to this day, I think that he meant well behind it. It's just the way he put it wasn't right. And he was, turns out, right about a lot of what he said. It's just with everything we are here months later. But anyways, looking at this, just like Iowa State, like you talked about, their AD came out, Jamie Pollard, and he said, look, I'm going to be open, tell you what we're going to miss out on if we don't have a football season. Like you said, $40 million in unfunded expenses in those next 6 months. And the revenue loss for educational funds alone for the 2021 fiscal year, educational funds, $41 million. And then since the start of the coronavirus through August 23rd, their estimations would be $73 million. Okay. That is unbelievably. And then we see, every time I see these numbers from this school, I'm like, wow, it just makes it that much more of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, I thought something interesting that he said, look, when he talks about the safety of college players, but then also the money factor of it, too, he said, look, the answer, if I'm being completely honest, it lies in the middle there. Which, isn't that true? If we're being completely honest, like, you want to come out and say, hey, look, it's all about the health.
Yeah.
Which and you may truly believe that, but when we see it from a financial standpoint, and there will be people that would call him out on that and be like, we know now, especially with those numbers you threw out, and he's like, it's in the middle.
And that's why I feel like if there's going to be a middle ground that's going to be, quote, successful, is going to have to take the approach of we're going to have games, but with no fans. We're going to, because that's the thing is, I still find it hard to believe that you're going to be able to have fans and avoid any type of liability if somebody can zero down to this is when I got it is because I was at this game.
That's the thing is my argument against that has been how would they?
Right, but that's the thing. If
do you take that chance?
But that's the thing is if you find some sneaky person who literally quarantines and the only time they go out is then and comes down with it and they can document that, boom, you're liable.
Right.
But then you still, because that's the thing is Pollard brings up is, a lot of your revenue is on ticket sales and stuff like that, but it's also TV revenue. You can at least curb some of the issues if you have games and they're televised. You still get that TV money, but that's the other thing though right now with the canceling of non-conference games is how is that going to impact money? Because again, Oklahoma State was supposed to be getting a decent chunk for their season opener because it was going to be prime time on Thursday with Oregon State. That's why they moved it, was so they could get that TV money. Well, if you replace it with North Texas, and ESPN's like, we really don't want that game now.
Yeah,
that you possibly lose. Or again, if these right now with them taking the approach of conference only, if Big Ten and Pac-12 say we're doing conference only, but we're still just doing 9 games, okay, then there's still money that they were expecting that's now lost from losing those. So I think maybe that's what we're finding out with these conferences where they're making their decision now is, we can find a middle ground of possibly being able to have games because maybe they're hoping that by pushing back the start to mid to late September, maybe the COVID cases are starting to dip down again, and you can maybe even try to bring some people into your stands. But I'll be also interested to see if, because the Pac-12, the way they worded it was conference only.
Yeah.
They didn't say that, there's been no word if they're just going to have just 9 games or if they're going to switch it up and say all 12 games will be from within in the conference. And that'd be a game changer, because if they did that and the Big Ten tried to do that, SEC, or the Big 12 can't do that.
Right. And here's the thing. When I think about fans in the stands and all that too, I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on the race this weekend in Bristol. There will be 30,000 fans there. Okay, so we've talked about that number possibly being a number that some colleges have tried to throw out there for making that happen. I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on that to see how that goes. As well, I'll say this. Pollard also went on to talk about how Ames, for instance, all the local businesses and everything that would be involved if there were no football.
Right.
Talk about it's their economic survival.
Said they would lose $2 billion if there was no football season. Yeah.
I think about those people, and I think about the health there too. The mental health side of it.
Yeah.
If these people lose their business, who knows what happens to some of these
And I think that's the thing that people need to stop and think about, because if they're worrying about that, should they not be worrying about people being rushed to the hospital with this? So these hospitals becoming inundated, and then your community that you're worried about the economy suddenly becomes a hot spot. Like, if you're worried about the economy, you should be worrying about the health, because it's coinciding right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so where do you balance that? I mean, do you just say we just can't have fans? Well,
I think you try to do what you're doing right now here in Stillwater of mandating masks. Still have most businesses open, allow you to still try to pump money into the economy, but mandating masks. I know I went to Petco on Sunday, and everyone was wearing a mask until late because we were there for puppy training class. And late in our hour there, a couple came in and didn't have a face mask on, and the trainer that was working with us stopped and told them, and ultimately they left. They checked out and left instead of walking around. So I think...
Wait, so you're telling me that can happen?
Do what?
Someone can actually leave a place
without... and they were holding like a fish or something like that, so they didn't throw it at her. Yeah, it's amazing. You can actually be civil during this. I think that's right now, the middle ground is wearing masks. The problem is some people are unwilling to reach that middle ground, but those same people are also the ones complaining about why we need to have athletics going on and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it too has to do with how much this has changed, and also how much opinions have changed, okay? Because, and the CDC is a perfect example. When all this was going on, it was, you don't need masks. It doesn't help anything. We need masks for hospitals.
That's because they were also going under with the data at the time.
Right,
that they didn't believe
that's
was
what
airborne.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
But there's going to be those people, when they see that and how much it has changed with this, will be stubborn enough to say, look, you said this at one time, now you're saying this, so
and that's the problem, is so many people don't understand how science works. that data changes. I mean, that's why you see a push against climate change and all this. I mean, when it comes to science is so politicized right now, it's amazing. But even though we have data saying, hey, there are people dying from this disease, it's still somehow a political standpoint. It baffles me.
When we come back, Lincoln Riley. Well, he had another comment about the football season, whether it's going to happen or not. I think it's pretty interesting. We'll get into that. And then later on, of course, Chris Jones Some big news coming out for the Chiefs and Chris Jones today. A couple more players and their agents are on the hot seat now with the deadline to get deals done in the NFL is tomorrow. We could see some more moves before it's all said and done. We'll talk about all of that. Much more to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network next.
Well, I'm not trying to get in the way. Minding my own, got nothing to say about nobody. That's right, nobody. Don't shake my tree, don't rattle my cage. You and me will be on the same page. Got no trouble. Don't make no trouble.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you. Back, original team, back in black, and actually we're in white and orange and whatever the blue stripes over there. Yeah. We're rocking it all. We got a lot still to get to. College football remains the number one topic, I would think, in sports, really. I mean, it's just all of a sudden with the Big Ten announcement, the Pac-12, and everything, it's like, okay, who's next? Because we saw the Patriot League said we're just not having it.
Junior college was ultimately next
to the spring, which
all fall sports.
Yeah, all fall sports. That's going to be pretty interesting to keep an eye on because, like you talked about, and I agree, junior college football is on the rise. We think of junior college, it's more baseball, basketball, but... And
I saw over the weekend, Robert's son, Zach, actually took a job over at, I think it was Northeastern State. And I wonder if some of that has to do with it. The fact that the JUCO was moving to a spring and kind of disrupting things there. So, I mean, I feel like the timing of it might be linked.
Yeah, he'll be actually on with Tom tomorrow on Where Are They Now. Okay. So hopefully he'll get that out of Zach a little bit and kind of dig and we'll see if that had something to do with it. I wouldn't be surprised because that is a big change for a lot of those guys. But you know what? Changed him too from leaving a head coaching position to not a head coaching position.
Right.
So,
especially because I know Robert has said that there's a lot of Power 5 programs that were interested in him as a position coach. So that's why I feel like everything I had heard and then the timing of it makes me almost feel like it was a. You know what? I maybe it's more. You're going to find more security by hitching your wagon to, even as a position coach, to a program like that than JUCO, which is definitely in flux right now because of the COVID.
This might also be, for a lot of coaches, it's like this year we first of all don't even know what's going to happen with it, and I think there's going to be a lot of focus on how do coaches handle this year, okay? Because there's going to be differences, right? So it's like, wow, he did a really good job here in this situation, which we hope never happens again, but look how he handled it. And all of a sudden, that success holds a little bit more weight than maybe any other season. So I can't wait to see what he has to say tomorrow. He'll be on Where Are They Now at 4:30 with Tom Dorado. Before we get to what Lincoln Riley said, I gotta give some credit to the SEC and the Big 12. I mean, I think they've handled pretty much everything, with all the coronavirus and football pretty well. For the most part, there's been times where occasionally Bob Bowlesby says something like, okay. But here, with the SEC coming out and saying we're going to wait till later in July to decide.
ACC is also in that group.
Did that too, yes.
Yeah.
And then kind of the same thing with Bowlesby and the Big 12. I thought, and I really kind of appreciated what Bob Bowlesby said about the news with the Big 10 because they immediately asked him, is the Big 12 thinking of considering right now doing no non-conference games? And he just said no.
Yeah.
But
I found it interesting. Bowlesby also mentioned the fact that they actually had a commissioners meeting that morning.
Yeah.
And there was no talk. Apparently the Big Ten commissioner was even kind of said, no, we got nothing on the horizon. And then literally that dump right there, which again makes you wonder if that was premeditated, that he knew that it was coming anyway, or if he that's what was the thought. And then the ADs switched the tune when he went back to talk to them later that day.
I thought Power 5 schools were all on the same page, always.
Singing from the same sheet. That is what Bowlesby has been saying since March.
That's
and what did I tell you? I literally told you by mid-July we will see them start singing off their own sheet because and that's exactly what we're seeing. Two of the conferences already singing to their own tune.
And that's why I think it led to what Bowlesby said next, which was he's like, you know what? That was a little premature by the Big Ten. And we're not going to do that yet because it seems like it's too early. I think maybe that had a little bit. He's like, you know what, I was thinking they were going to do one thing, and they kind of blindsided us and did another.
Yeah.
But I did kind of appreciate that, because I agree. Like, at the same time, yes, time is running out, but you still don't have to make, I guess, a decision that big now. With data changing, trends changing, all of this continuously, there's so much that you have to take in next week and the week after. That's why they're saying, let's wait till the end of July, the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC, because who knows by then if something does change drastically enough to where we can make this happen. All of a sudden, how dumb does the Big 10 and the Pac-12 look compared to what we did, especially if those three conferences are able to pull it off?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think some of it could be the fact that, especially like right now with the Pac-12, I just saw that apparently the mayor of LA is saying that they might have to roll back again because they're seeing another spike since they've reopened things. And that's the thing, is like, people don't understand that ultimately it's the decision for having college athletics. It's going to come down to the citizens. If you're out there, if you're not wearing a mask, if you're having parties to try to come down with it yourself to win money, like that's preventing this from happening, because ultimately most mayors and governors are going to look and say, okay, there's a health risk for the people of my state. We can't have this in place.
The encouraging signs were that we've seen a number of schools that have come back with no positive tests recently, Oklahoma being one of them, besides the couple they still had active. Lincoln Riley's comments today, he's been making sure he's been out there this whole time talking about, well, we gotta have health first, and we're gonna push things back, which they did, but still had a number of positive cases and all that. Comes out today, and his quote was, quote, I just can't imagine a scenario where we don't play. Whether it's something we do in the fall, whether it's a shortened season, whether it's spring, there's nothing we should take off the table. Regardless of what we have to do, I don't think there's anything we can't work around and can't adjust and can't make work in order to play college football. We've all got to do our part in that.
Yeah.
He's talked about before, he was one of those open voices with the spring season, which I'm still kind of surprised about. I mean, I don't see it working, especially for Power 5 schools, as much as anything else.
Well, and I thought I saw somewhere, I didn't get to listen into Holder's press conference, back on that Friday night news dump as well before the holiday, but apparently he made the comment, supposedly, that a spring season would be a reality. He sees it being feasible as well.
Feasible? I mean, is that, I don't know, is that the right word? I'm thinking more of it's doable, but it's obviously, if you're going to add, and they've made it clear, ADs and presidents around the country, it's not something that's what we want to happen. This is like last resort, okay?
Well, and this thing is like all these bowl games, they don't want to have to change things, but I think if you were to ask, the Cotton Bowl, would you rather have no game this year, or would you rather, say we have it in April? I'm assuming they'd say, okay, yeah, if those are our options, yeah, we'll move it.
If they can pull off somewhat of a normal season, I wouldn't be shocked to see no bowl games. I'm being completely honest here. Wouldn't be shocked to see no bowl games, okay? If they kept it to a playoff only.
That's where if I'm an athlete and if I'm being told no bowl game, I'm debating if I play them. Because why am I risking my health?
Right.
If there's no, because most athletes that I've talked to, when it comes to football, is that is your prize for your season, for all the blood, sweat, and tears. Is you're going to go to a bowl game, you're going to get all this free swag, you're going to get to go to a place maybe you've never seen or been to, because you're from Dallas and you've never gotten to go to Orlando before, and you did that for the Camping World. Like it's a reward for the season, and if you're told that unless you're in the Final Four that you're not going to be rewarded. I mean, at that point, if you're not an elite where you think you have an NFL prospect, do you really risk your health if you know that you're not going to get rewarded at the end with a bowl game?
Which maybe the NCAA pulls an NCAA and waits and waits and waits, and the season goes on, and it's somewhat without a hitch. And then if they say, hey, look, we are predicting a bigger wave here, a bigger spike, or it's starting to come back a lot more even all of a sudden in those cooler months, and they go, no bowl games, I just wouldn't be surprised, because if they were able to say, you know what, we got this far. Let's say we're almost done with the season. We got this far, and it looks to us that we're going to be able to pull off the playoff games, but with think about all the bowl games that go on, tons of them. If they say all across the country, if they say we're going to wipe these out, okay? We're going to wipe out all these bowl games, or if anything, maybe some of the smaller ones. But they say we're going to get rid of these bowl games and focus on this college football playoff. What would happen next? You'd be hearing and they've already said, which is the issue. College Football Playoff Committee said we're not changing the format. But you would hear everybody say we got to have more teams in the college football playoff then, right? That would be the next argument.
Yeah, because here's the thing. We've already seen a situation where teams got to play an entire season and didn't get to play in the postseason. We saw it with winter sports.
Yeah.
And if you remember, there were a lot of upset athletes about that.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, you look at
rightfully so.
Rightfully so. But to then and that's the thing. Like they didn't get the opportunity to just go for a championship, and so it's slightly different. But again, their reward at the end of their season was to vie for a championship, go to Minnesota for wrestling, and try to be an All-American there. You're then with football though, it's hey, not only are you getting to go somewhere, but you're also going to be coming back with a new TV, an Xbox, and technically this upcoming fall, you have the new Xbox and PlayStations coming out. Those are usually going to be hot items for bowl games. That in years past, when a new console has come out, those have been the hot items given out at bowl games. And if you're being told that, we're not doing bowl games, and because we're not having bowl games, you're not getting the swag suites, there's going to be an uproar.
I honestly always...
And I think rightfully so.
Yeah, there would be. But I honestly, personally wanted to always be a part of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. I heard about the stuff they got from Chick-fil-A, and I said, that's about as good as anything else.
The Cotton Bowl, as a media person...
okay, that,
was... I mean, they treated us right. I mean, we actually... My wife has a Tiffany's bracelet.
Wow.
Because they had a media night where you could invite your loved ones with you, food, prizes, stuff like that. And they had this little like the money machines where it blows up, but on certain ones it had prizes that you could win. And we ended up winning a Tiffany's bracelet.
Yeah, the money that is spent on some of these bowls is nuts.
It's ridiculous. It is crazy. And I think that same night it was maybe Train. Like they again at the Cotton Bowl. This was this has been 5 years ago now for OSU. But they had 2 of their nights. They had big name bands. One of them was a country band that I'd never heard of, but my wife, a big country singer, listener, knew who it was. I mean, they go all out some of these bowl games, and so I mean, if you were to take that away, maybe they that might help them anyway because they're not spending money for that stuff, but they're also losing out on a lot of money for sponsorships and stuff like that.
I'm saying, like, if at that time they're still not comfortable with having fans, or they're still not comfortable with having people at the potential concerts, like you just said, and all this stuff. But would you be surprised if the NCAA said some point during the season? And
that would be the NCAA,
right?
Yeah.
Like, would you not? Like, they would announce that.
But would you then? Do you think you would see then in the middle of the season a mutiny, if you will, groups of players saying then, why are we playing then?
I mean, honestly,
because we've been told by some coaches that we're just out there to pump money into the economy of the state. We've now been told that we don't even get to go to a bowl game and get the reward of the season. What is there? What is there for you as an athlete?
Yeah.
If you don't think you're going to be an NFL prospect, what's the point of still going out there?
The problem is they would be pulling what would happen, or forcing what would happen if they had a spring season into the normal season. Because there are a lot of players anyways that if they know the bowl game and that's as far as they're about to get, they just don't play the bowl game, right? We see it all the time, and it makes sense. I would do it too. But in this situation, you would force that to happen. If you said no bowl games and you said we're going to keep it the normal college football playoff, there would be a ton of guys and some NFL prospects that they would say, we're just done. Whenever that announcement came out, it'd be like, next day, we're done. And if you're a college football coach, would you blame them? I mean, probably not, right? I mean, I would understand, but
I mean, some would, because you have a contract to this team. You play for your brother.
It'd be like, you played with us so far. Why give up now? But then you're like, look
I'd be curious. That might be. We've got Big 12 Media Days start next week. That might be a question for athletes of, if you were told that there's no chance of a bowl game unless you were the top 4, would you consider sitting out this season.
I think you'd get the answer of, "Nah, man, I'm gonna play for my team no matter what," and they'd be like, "No, seriously, no, really, answer that question, like, for real."
No, you're not getting to go to Orlando. You're not.
No,
getting
did you hear me?
Yeah, you're not getting a new Xbox. You're not getting anything.
Yeah, I think the honest answer would be a little different, and it's an interesting scenario because, and it's one that I just don't see. That's for instance, right now, nothing is impossible. Okay, so if it happened, I wouldn't be like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening." I said that earlier about conferences or teams, conferences canceling non-conference games. At one point, it's like, it's not going to happen. Well, look, now it's all of a sudden a reality.
Yeah.
When we come back in hour number 2, Chris Jones is the topic of discussion in the NFL. We'll get to him and much more coming up next in the Afternoon Sports Drive.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. You seem to want from me what I
Welcome back.
cannot give.
Hour number 2.
I feel so long.
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist.
I have a dream that
As we continue to roll on here, getting into some NFL news. Man, we've hit it pretty well this off season, especially with the timing of our show and the news that keeps coming out for the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh man, it's good stuff. Chris Jones, okay.
Real quick, I didn't see this.
Yeah.
This was before we hopped on. Brett McMurphy had tweeted out, we were talking about SEC.
Yep.
SEC has made an announcement on fall sports. It will postpone the start of volleyball, soccer, and cross-country competition through at least August 31st. This does not impact football as of now.
There you go. So some other sports that will be impacted.
And again, I think we all believe that the SEC was going to be the last holdout for pushing anything back with fall, and again, I believe that just leaves the Big 12 as the only, because I think the ACC made an announcement that they're pushing back the start of fall sports till September 1.
Yep.
But I don't think so. I think that leaves just the Big 12 yet to announce any alterations to their sports. But that's the thing, though, with Big 12. If OSU women's soccer is scheduled to face Duke or Florida State or whatever right now, in August, they can't play it anyway.
It's true.
So ultimately, the Big 12 is finding themselves where they're, some of their non-conference games for cross country and soccer of note probably have been canceled or trying to postpone or something like that.
And that could be playing into why we haven't heard an announcement as well either. Still trying to figure things out on that end. So there you go. Latest update with the SEC, but no regards towards football, as they said that will come later on in the month of July.
Well, yeah, and obviously, they're looking a month ahead is kind of what they're doing, and that's the thing we got to keep in mind is most fall sports outside of football actually do start. Usually, I think in the past, like soccer has started workouts like the 1st of August, and then usually by the second week they're usually starting their schedule. I'm actually pulling up OSU's real quick for women's soccer. They're technically supposed to start their season with an exhibition game on August 15th.
Okay.
As of now, and that's against North Texas. Looking at it right now, there's no opponent that we know of right now where their conference would alter when they could play that game, because they've got they open with Louisiana, Oklahoma, St. Louis, Missouri State. The first Power 5 opponent outside of the Big 12 that they face is Texas A&M on September 4th. So it would still fall in the window, and they could conceivably possibly face Texas A&M, even though the SEC is pushing back the start of their fall sports to at least September 1st.
Said Missouri State, that reminds me, because I got to flow you this question before we get to Chris Jones here. Missouri State planning on playing Oklahoma this year in football. So they recently were in talks of trying to push that game up to still try to get it in.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah.
We can move it up a week, I believe, yeah.
Does that idea make sense to you? I know we've talked about that with the start of the season at some point, but even that, I mean, does it make sense?
If my biggest thing is the health of all this. If you can guarantee that you can play the game, everyone be healthy, then I think you got to do whatever it takes to.
According to Lincoln Riley, you can. He says that we can adjust. This is something we feel like we can get done and adjust to. So with that being the case, I mean, if I'm Missouri State, I'm thinking, okay, that's probably a little bit of a good sign, but still waiting on that chance for the Big 12 to say no non-conference game. So, but I think moving it up a little bit. It's kind of just like some schools are doing with school, right? And anyways, in the academics part of it. So. I mean, I could see it. I think it's something that we talked about, didn't get a ton of discussion, and probably now, since everything is on the table again, it might be. And we may see this announcement coming up for so I saw McMurphy tweeted earlier some game now is taking place on a Sunday instead of a Saturday, for instance. In some
I think
place.
It was for next season.
Oh, was that for next season? Okay.
The Notre Dame, Florida State
Yeah, that might be next year. But see, what we're going to see is I think different teams, different conferences float this idea of, if we're ready, if we're good to go, and even if it's a little shorter than what we usually get to do training wise, well, why not? Let's try it out. Anything could happen. It's changing all the time. So there you go. Latest news of the SEC, not impacting football though, for anyone wondering. All right, Chris Jones is a rich man. He's a very rich man. We said this about Kansas City Chiefs players the last couple of weeks now. First of all, he gets signed for 4 years. $85 million, $60 million guaranteed. That's big money. But first of all, when the Chiefs signed Patrick Mahomes, people probably didn't realize how important it was those first 2 years before the extension actually starts.
Yep.
They gave a lot of wiggle room to Brett Veach, which he really, if we're being honest, doesn't need a lot of wiggle room. Okay, he can make things happen. We're seeing that here too. A guy like Chris Jones, I completely get this contract. Okay, I think it's warranted. People are going to be like, it's too much.
Yeah.
The importance of a solid defensive lineman.
Well, and here's the thing, though, is with this contract, it makes him the second highest paid defensive tackle behind Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
And if you look at the stats, he has the second most sacks of a defensive tackle behind Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
So, yes, market value, he's right where he's supposed to be for the money and considering what he's been able to produce.
33 sacks in 61 games. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's not even talked about the disruptions with the balls, tipped interceptions, fumbles, all that stuff. People think back to the Super Bowl and he didn't have a sack in the Super Bowl. He played such a big part. I think a lot of that helped. There was going to be talks anyways this offseason with trying to get him re-signed.
Yeah.
But the way he played in that game, I think a lot of people that were like, is he going to be really that good? Can he do it in big-time situations? Like, okay, this guy needs to be paid.
Here's the thing we got to keep in mind, because you can kind of see it sometimes with Aaron Donald as well, is because you also have a $20 million a year defensive end, and that's the thing is if that's why as much as so many people discredited the Ohio State defensive end last year down the stretch. They're like, well, he didn't have as big of an impact. Well, if you go back and look at the film, he was also getting double and triple teamed down the end of the season. Well, that's the thing is if most offensive lines are saying we want to send the pressure to the outside. So they're going to double team a guy like Chris Jones, which then allows single for Frank Clark to go off like he did in the second half.
Well, you're going to
of last
see
season.
the occasional double team on Frank Clark.
Right. But when that happens, they're possibly only singling up Chris Jones, and that's why you saw, I think, Emmanuel Ogbah last year had success.
Yeah.
Is because so many offensive lines are going to have to worry about Frank Clark and Chris Jones that you get guys like Emmanuel Ogbah or others who come up in that line and are disruptive because the offensive lines are so focused on those two $20 million linemen that you have.
Another guy that got signed on that front line, Mike Pennell. I mean, he had a huge impact with Kansas City in the run game, and he's one of those under-the-radar signs. This stat right here is nuts, okay? Chiefs had $177 in cap space.
After the Super Bowl,
$177. Okay? They paid Chris Jones today. They restructured Sammy Watkins' contract, which we talked about. Also re-signed Matt Moore recently here.
Yep.
Rashad Breeland. Demarcus Robinson.
Yep.
Mahomes with $500 million. All of that happened.
Yeah. with $177 on the cap space.
I mean, that's genius. The way that it was done. I mean, Brett Veach is setting a new precedent for how to be a general manager of a football team.
I think the best tweet I've seen today is the Chiefs really just signed Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes to long-term contract before the Cowboys could sign Dak.
Yeah, and then I actually thought about that because we're going to get to it. Am I crazy for immediately, as soon as I see these things, thinking that the Cowboys still haven't gotten it done? No, because it's kind of funny at this point. It's like, seriously, they can't come to terms. And he is probably, he probably actually is the biggest name left out there that is or is not going to get a deal.
And the interesting thing with the Chris Jones contract that I read today is it's kind of structured similar to the Mahomes one, where I guess they still are going to have $5 million in cap space for this year. And what I read is it's structured in a way where it's similar to Mahomes, where they think that Jones taking this deal allows the Chiefs now to have some wiggle room to re-sign Travis Kelce or an extension for Tyreek Hill. And because that was the thing when talking with Jimmy Gillespie in the office before coming in, he was like, well, I don't mind. They're just pouring all their money into two guys. I was like, no, because you also have Frank Clark, who's making a lot of money. Tyreek Hill's making a lot of money. Travis Kelce's making a lot of money. Tyrann Mathieu's making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, technically you have at least 5 to 6 guys that are making a lot of money, but those are also impactful positions, impactful players, to where you can go with a rookie. I mean, because that's the thing we forget about, that with Tyrann Mathieu there in safety, you had a rookie safety alongside him that was having a great year, but that got injured late in the season. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he got injured like either the last game of the season or the first round of the playoffs.
Juan Thornhill?
Yeah, Thornhill, yeah. I mean, if you're able to have elite guys, you can factor in some young guys or bring in, I think ultimately with the way they're setting up, you may see a lot of kind of like we saw with NBA players, especially in the 90s, of somebody chasing a ring late in their career who says, man, well, we got Mahomes. They've got everything built in. I can go there, take the veterans minimum because I've already made my millions, during the prime of my life, and I can still contribute, and I can possibly go chase a ring. So I think it's what Veach has done, and I made the comment to a couple of friends today. I was like, at this point, Veach is a first ballot Hall of Fame GM.
No, really?
If everyone's talking about Mahomes with what he's done so far, he's a first ballot, even if he were to suffer a long-term injury right now. Brett Veach, what he's done, I think I saw Trey Wingo said that he's already the GM of the year, and they haven't even started the season.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, it's true. The way they got both those deals done. And look, I don't know about you, but I see these numbers on these deals, and it's not, we're going to see more deals across the league. But I think that, we're seeing that the NFL teams this year, for instance, are looking at smaller crowd sizes. But these numbers also tell me that they're expecting some income here with crowds. Okay, because
now
ultimately pay their salaries.
If anything, I think it more reinforces that they're going to play. I don't know if they'll play with fans, but because you're still going to get a lot of money from TV.
No, you will.
A lot of money from TV.
And I think that it definitely does enforce
the fact. And then obviously the new ad revenue from the tarps.
Yeah. And throw that in with what fans you can have. I mean, and then throw in the idea, like you just said, it looks like they're for sure going to play by signing these guys.
And that'll be the interesting thing, though, is if since they've already taken the approach of tarp with advertising on the first 6 to 8 rows.
Yep.
If they say, hey, we're not going to have any fans, well, maybe you make the bigger tarps.
Why would you not
charge more money?
Yeah.
And then you at least kind of push a little bit back towards the black there as well.
You could tell some of your biggest advertisers, look, we will give you this half of the stadium. How about?
Yeah.
Mercedes-Benz over here is going to get this half of the stadium. That's a big chunk of money. It's definitely possible. But Chris Jones, look, I think that it's extremely important to also remember that not only is he maybe one of your last pieces that you needed to solidify this team as good as any to have a chance at 2 back-to-back Super Bowls, but it's also, we have to think the success the Chiefs, I think, had in the draft has gotten a little bit less attention simply because of these massive signings this offseason. But specifically when I think of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think they did such a good job by sneaking a guy that could potentially also, when you think about it, could be a 3-down back before it's all said and done. they're reloading, but at the same time re-signing with success that they've had.
Yeah.
That's what's going to make a successful franchise.
I posed the question. I'll pose it to you as well. When the Chiefs end up being 13-time defending Super Bowl champions, they're going to have to build a separate wing just for this franchise at Canton, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It'll be here's the Hall of Fame, and then here's Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, and I said no disrespect to Mahomes and Reed, I think that wing has to be named the Brett Veach wing.
Oh yeah, I mean you need statues. We need everything.
Yeah.
Let's rename the stadium. Let's go from Arrowhead to Brett Veach Stadium.
Yeah. I actually posed the question on Twitter: is the mayor going to declare a Brett Veach Day yet up there in Kansas City?
That should be next. I mean, my goodness, the guy has just knocked it out of the park. A lot of teams, when you look at some of what would they have done in these situations, probably wouldn't have got it done, to be honest with you.
I've seen obviously there was the D word. It was already being floated around after, the Super Bowl. Obviously, it was people doubled down when the Mahomes contract came about.
Yep.
But now I've seen it even more so with this 4-year contract for Chris Jones. I mean, and again, we're looking at it through as Chiefs fans. I mean, is this the start of a dynasty?
Yeah, I mean, I said it. I thought the dynasty started after the Super Bowl. I really did. I mean, I said that even before, that this could be the case because we saw what contracts were going to be there. But I had floated the idea before I'd even came here that we would see the occasional even skill player that would restructure a contract like Sammy Watkins did, for instance, like Frank Clark has done. We would see guys that would be willing to do that because this is such a unique team.
Yeah.
They want to stay here for a long time.
I think Sammy Watkins could have made bank.
Oh, I do too.
If he would have left this year.
And this was even, I mean, he had an okay year. It wasn't great, but he still could have made a lot of money.
Right.
And he's proven that before that he's worth it. So, yeah, but I've said that because of how special the combination of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is. This is really unique.
And I think the someone made a great point as well, because some people were saying, well, obviously they're spending all their contract or all their cap space on these guys that eventually they won't have anything. Well, if you go back, what's helping them to get to this point and will help going forward is their ability within the draft to find talent in the top 3 rounds. There's not been an uber bust in the top 3 picks over the last few years. I mean, we remember we were talking to McCole Hardman. He's going to be a replacement Tyreek Hill a year ago because of the off the field issues, and now you're sitting here saying, man, McCole Hardman and Tyreek Hill together, once McCole Hardman gets a little bit more experience under his belt, I mean, those two guys lining up side by side or on either side of the field, I mean, that with Patrick Mahomes, that's going to be unstoppable. And then you throw in Travis Kelce, or if they come next draft, if someone else similar to a McCole or a Tyreek, or in my mind, I think if there's anyone that gets maybe shoved out with the next contract extensions, I think ultimately it's going to probably be Kelce, because he's getting up there in age. He'll turn 32 when his contract expires. He's got 2 more years on it. So maybe you draft a tight end prospect in the next draft to start, because you go back to with Kelce, it took him 4 years in the league before he finally blossomed into a 1,000-yard receiver. So maybe you start looking at that with the next draft. But I think ultimately that's the guy that you can say, hey, we'll cut ties there. But I could also see him, kind of like what you were just saying, of taking the approach of, man, I made my money.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. You mentioned the him and Mahomes, how, I mean, they're thick as thieves. They are best friends.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that when the contract comes up for Kelce, and if Mahomes wants him to play, that Mahomes doesn't say, hey, I got you covered.
Oh yeah.
I got money.
Yeah,
I got money. I got you covered. Take what you can to structure it to worth it. But
and hey,
you know what? I'm paying for golf. I'm paying for meals.
Yeah.
I got you covered.
Look, and let's not act like Travis Kelce isn't well off. This dude is right now looking to buy the Mets, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So I think he's going to be okay. The thing too with tight ends is it's such a thin position in the NFL.
Yeah.
We see Jason Witten, for crying out loud, come back, who has no business being in the league.
But again, I think the age is what would worry me if I'm Beach is, okay, we're at a position like tight end that takes a lot of hits, maybe a lot more hits than your regular wide receiver, because you're asked to go over the middle a lot more. At 32 in 2 years, do you worry about, hey, is he going to, do we put a lot of money into a guy that could be seeing his production go down because the body's starting to catch up to him?
Well, I think
that would be my worry.
Too, they had Blake Bell. They were, and I'm be honest, Blake Bell I think had a shot at a future of Kansas City.
Don't throw it to him on third down.
Yeah, so that's
why
the thing.
Why they ever made a play to throw to Blake Bell on third down?
Yeah,
just baffled me.
That's the thing, is that I think they thought maybe we could groom him under Travis Kelce, and maybe someday he becomes the next Travis Kelce. Who knows? I mean, I don't know if they shipped him out, obviously, and then so it's not the case. But yeah, I think you're right. When it comes to what Mahomes wants, he's basically going to get with any of his guys. Okay, because. Yeah, we saw too, and the draft for the last few years has been incredible with the Chiefs. Yeah. The only time it's come back to bite them is with Kareem Hunt, and it's something they never expected.
You've asked that question. I think it was more with Brady of do guys stick around, maybe take a little less money because, hey, we're going to play. I think we're starting to see that with Mahomes.
Yeah.
But that's also because they also know that he's there for 12 years.
Well, yeah,
with Brady, it's hey, maybe this is his one and only year, maybe 2 years in Tampa Bay. So do I necessarily consider sticking around for just the 2 years that he's going to be here? Where with Mahomes, Chris Jones is like, 4 years, let's do it, because we can go 5 times, run it back 5 times, and then I can maybe go after a bigger contract at that point.
Well, and that has something to do with it. The other part is too, when you ask a guy, hey, where do you want to go? Because usually the motivating factor, at least for some of it's for money, but most is want to win a Super Bowl. Where else are you thinking of that you would have a better shot? Yeah. I mean, with Mahomes locked up for the way that he is, with you seeing what Brett Veach will do to get some of these guys to stick around. Yeah. At that point, there's too much on the table where I am if I'm in Kansas City.
I think that's the coolest thing that I've seen this summer is, I know athletes, they get along, they love each other and whatnot. If you spend so much time with guys, you have to.
Sure.
But it just feels different though with this roster.
Yeah,
I mean,
it does.
The reaction from Chris Jones after Mahomes got his money, it wasn't a, man, bring me my money.
My turn. Yeah,
it's my turn. I'm going to make bank now. It was a, dude,
congrats,
every penny.
Same for Mahomes to Chris Jones.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing is you don't always see that with some players.
And it's not just
in all the pro sports.
All the stars on the team are the same way. We've seen reaction. The GQ cover came out with Mahomes. I looked into one of the stories. This is too good. Okay, I don't know if you read it yet.
Post Malone?
Yeah.
Yes.
How good was that?
That was great. I actually marked that because I wanted to talk about it. Yeah.
Let's get into that when we come back, since we got to take a break, because it is too good. Also, Dak Prescott, we talked about it. Is he going to get a deal? They have the Cowboys have a day left to get it done if they want that to happen. Also, Derrick Henry, in my opinion, he vies for the top running back spot in the league with Christian McCaffrey. Is he going to get paid? Talk about all that still come in the afternoon sports drive next.
She like my futuristic sounds in the new spaceship. Futuristic if a Philip cake. She never need a man, she what a man need. So I keep on falling for her daily. We was at Coachella going crazy. Stack a couple M's like I was shady.
Welcome back to the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Holmquist with you. Before we get to this truly amazing Patrick Mahomes story, we got a new watch list set out, which I said in the report earlier today. We also had the Chuck Bednarik watch list was put out with Colby Harvell Peel on it as well.
And I think Amon got kind of shafted there. To me, Amon should have been on that watch list as well.
Okay. I think it's fair.
I would have gone with both Harvell and Amon because, again, it's for the best defensive player. And I would argue last year, for the entire season, Amon Ogbongbemiga was the best player. Second half of the season, Colby Harvell-Peel was, definitely the best.
Yeah, for sure. So what's our next one that we have set up
Davey
here?
O'Brien,
yep.
The quarterback National Quarterback Award watch list. Spencer Sanders is on it. There's, trying to count real quick, but not out loud. Looks like about 25 players on the list. Also from the Big 12, Alan Bowman from Texas Tech, Charlie Brewer from Baylor. You have Sam Mellinger from Texas is on there. I think that's Brock Purdy from Iowa State as well. You do not have OU's Rattler, but I think that's more of a because we don't know if he's going to be the starting quarterback, even though he is going to be the starting quarterback type of thing. And I don't think – I'm trying to see if there's any non-conference opponents that Oklahoma State would be facing that might have anybody on the watch list, and it does not appear to be unless – Oklahoma State takes my suggestion from Friday to fill that conference or that season opener if we're allowed to have non-conference games. Alabama is currently looking for a Week 1 opponent as well.
Yeah.
Mac Jones for Alabama is on that watch list right now.
We talked a ton about I did the other day, and I love the idea it's floated out there because there is it's those two openings. It would be at a neutral site. You can get it there, and I said that not only would it be crazy for Oklahoma State to come away with a win against Alabama to open up the season, but think about how much the narrative would be shifted. It would be, oh my goodness, Mike Gundy has this team. These guys are on the same page. Yeah. They must have seen some change. It would have been all that stuff.
And what I also mentioned, which got a lot of people hyped up on Friday, especially Trey Cobb, is there is no better way, zero better way for Chuba Hubbard to start a Heisman campaign than to rush for 200 yards and a couple touchdowns against Alabama defense.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, and that would talk about opening some eyes on a team that's considered somewhat of a sleeper in some people's eyes in the Big 12.
That's all a contingent if all the conferences stick with having your SEC and Big 12 saying we're going to have non-conference games. But I think it'd be smart. I just don't see it happening, though, because I think Tuscaloosa with Alabama, I think they're going to try to have a home game now instead.
Me too.
Because they can afford to pay off somebody to come, to buy out the contract to come play there instead of somewhere else and, make it lucrative for them. And with Oklahoma State, Gundy does not want to play Alabama.
No, not in week 1,
and I'm not putting words into his mouth. It's you go back to back when Florida State was on the bracket. He did not like having Florida State there. He wants, I in my story in the newspaper on Saturday, I put in the number. I know it was at least 10 games below 500 that your non-conference opponents over the past 5 years have combined for less than 500, and only 2 of those teams have gone on to win at least 8 games in their season. That was Pittsburgh and Boise State. So, I mean, Alabama does not fit the mold that Mike Gundy typically wants in non-conference games.
Yeah, no, it would go from a 3-0 start to a possible 0-1 start. And I think, though, that you can literally pick out the good and the bad in so many ways, because even if they lost, if it was close, that would hold in the minds of the committee if they won the Big 12.
Right.
Now, if they got destroyed, and I mean like bad, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe this is Alabama, but maybe Oklahoma State's not who we thought they were.
Well, but then also, then you know that you're not anywhere being competitive and that's and that was the argument I made on Friday is eventually Oklahoma State, whether it's Mike Gundy or because Mike Gundy's made the comment that it's going to be the next coach that gets the program to a definitive top 15 program, top 10 program, that he's only going to get it to a top 25 right now. If you want to make that leap, you need to start scheduling more of, and I'm not saying Alabama, I'm just saying Alabama right now because they're also looking for a Week 1 opponent.
Yeah.
But you have to start scheduling harder competition in the non-conference, because right now we're seeing it. The last 4 years, Oklahoma State has not been prepared for the Big 12 play. You know why I know that? Because for the last 4 years, they've lost their Big 12 opener. Mm-hmm. 2 of those opponents they lost to went on to finish with losing records in Big 12 play. So by going out there and scheduling an actual a perennial top 25 program, while yes, you threaten your opportunity at making a playoff, you also improve your opportunities.
Yeah, you do. It's left and right so much.
Because the phrase I used Friday Oddly enough, Mike Boynton used the phrase in his tweet today about them starting up practice, and the wrestlers up at OSU have always said it to me. Iron sharpens iron. I mean, everyone talks about that in sports. Well, you're not sharpening your iron by going up against a crappy Oregon State team or a crappy Tulsa team or an FBS team. You're not preparing yourself so when you go into OU, who is the sharpest tool in the Big 12 shed, you're not prepared for it.
Yeah, and look, I get it too in the sense of if there were more teams available to be in the college football playoff, you for sure would maybe even consider it a little bit more.
Yeah.
With it being how it is, with only 4 teams getting in, you do understand, well, we just don't want to take a chance. If we really think this year for Oklahoma State, it's like we have a real shot in our eyes to win this Big 12 conference and try to get into the college football playoff. Who knows? And take a lot.
Not if you're going to lose your conference opener again and then lose to OU as you usually do. There's 2 losses, you're out. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, your one loss would have to be to OU, and hope that they also got a loss or 2 somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Bottom line, I don't think it's going to happen, but I always go back to it is 2020. Literally anything and everything is taking place.
Well, because if anything, that list that we just talked about, Davey O'Brien, with that shows you how many talented quarterbacks the Big 12 is going to have this year.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, to go in right now, you have Spencer Sanders, but he doesn't have a full year under his belt. He did suffer an injury, and you're going up against some talent at quarterbacks that have several years under their belt. So that's going to be tough for Oklahoma State. And again, I'm not dismissing them. I mean, they've got a lot of talent as well, but we also have to keep in mind of what other programs are bringing back and what they have. I mean, that's something that Tom always brings up is we only look at it from the Oklahoma State angle because we cover Oklahoma State. We know who's coming back, the talent they have coming back. But sometimes we forget to look and say, oh, wow, yeah, I forgot Texas Tech has Bowman coming back. Brock Purdy's coming back. I to be honest, totally forgot that Charlie Brewer was coming back for Baylor.
I mean, yeah, it's a good point to make. You look at everything and let's just say this too. If it were to happen in week 1, it would be easily the most viewed football game of the college football season to start off. I mean, everyone's eyes would be like, wow. Amidst all of this, we have and I think too, you could kind of get, and like this goes back to is any publicity really bad publicity type of thing with everything that went on with Oklahoma State. You get a lot of eyes on Oklahoma State in week 1. So, oh my gosh, they're up against Alabama. Can they really get it done? If so, the storyline is huge for the rest of the season. Okay, real quick before we take our break. I was reading the GQ with Patrick Mahomes on the front, and this story was fantastic. I remember watching the entirety of the Chiefs parade. Ironically enough, it was one of the last events with a lot of people in it, in one spot. You look back at the parade, and you're like, so that's what it looked like when a crowd gathered. And it was nuts. The parade was fun to watch. Patrick Mahomes was going crazy. Travis Kelce was going crazy. The whole team. It was fun to see. Everybody relaxed and celebrating a championship. Then later,
might have had over 20 beers that day, but according to Mahomes, he doesn't know how many of them were actually full because many of them ended up on his shirt.
We've all been there. We witnessed Patrick Mahomes downing beers many times on camera. Yeah. The perfect one was when he snags one that's tossed to him off the top of the bus, which only Patrick Mahomes could do, crushes it, and it was all over the place. So we see later on, and what I saw it on Twitter. Actually had people that I knew on Snapchat that were at the Post Malone concert that just happened to be in Kansas City that evening. Yep. So it was like, what better way to cap off this day of going ham all day by going to a Post Malone concert who happens to be in town.
Yeah, everyone knew about that, but we didn't know about what happened before the Post Malone event.
So what we saw was Mahomes and Kelce and their girlfriends walking out to this little VIP section area in the crowd,
right?
And everyone's cheering louder for them than they did for Post Malone. They're like, oh my gosh, this is nuts.
Yep.
They're just sitting there bringing it all in, and then you get the story of so they're sitting there backstage. Obviously, Post Malone's like, come backstage with me. They play beer pong. Okay, now the occasional person who gets into a beer pong game might play a couple games. That's good. That's a good old time.
The rule is winner keeps
the table. Yep. That's right, and that's how it always is. And a lot of guys still, though, when I think of winner takes the table, I don't know if the number tops out to what Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce were able to get down, reportedly.
Yeah.
15 games.
Yeah.
They beat Post Malone in. Okay, those
in
two are
which
partners.
apparently Post Malone was like bringing
Different
in
people.
Yeah, bringing in new teammates.
Yeah.
and could never get past the the MVPs and the champs.
If anyone's like, who the heck is Post Malone? Rap artist.
Yeah.
And he's known for his antics involving alcohol and whatnot.
Olin has a lot of tattoos.
Has a lot of tattoos. He's known for that's that guy that was tattooed so much.
Yeah.
It's that guy. So he's back there with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. He just keeps getting whipped over and over and over. And he finally says, you know what? If you beat me here.
Well, before we get to that one, it was at about, I think they said after 8 or 9 straight wins, Post Malone's agent comes in and says, hey, we got to start the show.
Right.
And
he was
said,
actually late for the show.
Yeah, the show started late because Post Malone was like, I'm not leaving until I win.
Yeah.
And then 6 more later, they're still winning, and Post Malone
so
puts a bet on it.
Imagine it too. We've been to concerts before. You're sitting there waiting for the main act.
Let's go.
You're like, where the heck is the main act? He's playing 6 games later. He's like, I got to beat these guys before I go. Oh, by the way, perform a concert.
Yeah.
In front of thousands of people. So he finally says, you know what? If you guys beat me in this final game here, you guys he had them write down their signatures on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
He said, I will get these.
Which were definitely drunken signatures.
I saw the picture. And I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen a Patrick Mahomes signature like that. It's a big P and then just a little scribble.
Yep.
So he says, sign these on a piece of paper. If you guys win this game, I will get them tattooed on my body right now.
Yeah.
They were like, what? So they beat him, of course. And Patrick Mahomes says, dude, you don't really have to get that. Like, that was funny. You don't have to do that. He goes, no. He has a tattoo artist with him in the backstage area and says, put their signatures on my skin. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce.
Did it after the show.
Did it after the show.
Yeah. They were already late to the show. They
get out there and perform.
Yeah, but they went back behind stage after the performance and tattooed both signatures, and then also had the KC Chiefs logo in between them.
The life of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce.
Your signature is permanently on the body of a man because you beat him in beer pong. That's just random.
You brought it up to me too, and I thought about it also. Can you imagine Patrick Mahomes in beer pong? It's not
fair.
Money.
It's not fair. That's like, I mean, that would be like, I'm sure most basketball players, I would assume, will be pretty good at beer pong as well.
He was probably no looking, tossing them off the wall, left-handed.
I want to know if he is an overhand or underhand guy, or if he's a lob or a straight line guy.
He's got to be probably a lobber. Because I think of the football motion that he does. Probably so used to it.
He throws a lot of darts,
he does.
Though.
Maybe he even sidearms it a little bit, and watches the elbows and makes sure it's all good.
I'm curious. I'd be curious if he's which way he throws.
What impresses me most about that whole story and that whole day is the partying that he and Travis Kelce and the Chiefs did before this concert, and then went to a Post Malone backstage.
Yeah.
And managed to play 15 games of beer pong, which I'm assuming probably was where you play with actual beer in the cups too. These dudes were out of their mind, and I'm like, the superstardom is crazy. It actually brings it back to me of like, you know what? This is officially, with the contract signing, everything that we're seeing now that Mahomes is getting publicly with all this press and everything. Yeah, he is now the new Tom Brady.
I think I haven't seen it yet, but I'm waiting for it, and I'm sure it's going to be coming from like that moron that covers the Broncos, who's literally belittles everything the Chiefs does just because it's his hot take and that's what his fans want to see. But I'm waiting for I haven't seen it yet, but there's someone to say, well, obviously he's party too hard, obviously he's not going to be taking it real. It's like, okay, but most of those people are the same people who were like hyping up Baker Mayfield. Oh yeah, he's passionate, blah, blah, blah. I think what we're seeing is a guy who likes to work hard to play hard.
That's exactly right. I've said this too, because there's always those people that are like, oh my gosh, kids watch this. Patrick Mahomes is out there. I'm like, he's living his life.
He's 24 years old.
And a Super Bowl champion and the face of the biggest sport in the world.
Yep.
What do you expect? There are cameras on. He can't be your role model to your little kid all the time.
I saw a reporter for Bleacher Report make the comment, and I'd be curious what you think before we take our last break. They believe that he is on the cusp of being the next Michael Jordan, not just on the field, but the fact that he is going to have an off the field international imprint like Michael Jordan did, like we saw with the Last Dance.
It could be that, and it could even be bigger because we live in the social media era.
Well, that, and because I think football is much greater than basketball was then as well.
It has taken over, and on top of that, when you look at everything that goes down with the interactions on social media, but also with everything in terms of, just like Michael Jordan did, the charities he has already, all that thrown into it too. He's not just this guy that's partying playing football. Right. He's making an impact on the community.
Yeah.
But also what I've heard in other stories is when people describe Mahomes and they say there's that specialness there that we've seen before with Michael Jordan in the locker room amongst the team and what he can do with his craft. Right now, it's only been a few years, but you can just tell, because there's sometimes where literally a play is made or a game is won, and you ask, really, how did that happen? I'm trying to break it down. You're like, he's just special.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I can see some of the comparisons, because obviously people talked about, at the time, and obviously during that documentary, of the gambling problem. That was Michael's release.
Yep.
He didn't drink at the time. Obviously he does cigars now. But Patrick Mahomes, it's let's have some few beers during the off season. Let's blow off some steam. But then it's hey, I'm going to yell at a rookie to run after the ball when he slows up in the middle of one of his first practices.
Yeah, look, I think back to the Johnny Manziel thing. Okay, he was always portrayed, and he was, as this party guy.
But he was partying during the season,
That's
too.
the thing. He was partying during the season, and he didn't have the talent to back it up.
Yeah.
That's the difference, is that Patrick Mahomes, and until we see some sort of a drop-off, and then you automatically go to, well, he's drinking too much, he's partying too much, whatever. That hasn't been the case. He has been consistent enough. The Chiefs are primed to reload and run it back again.
For a few years.
Yeah. So that's why, to me, it's a different situation where we're going to see ultimately down the road, like, wow, okay, this is another reason why he's different, because he can still get it done and have fun at the same time.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll have a short segment, and we'll get into, is Dak Prescott going to sign a deal? We'll know for sure in a day. That's next.
Levitating off the blacktop. Used to struggle getting started, now I can't stop. Used to be the quiet kid in the sandbox, now it's hands up every time that your man rocks. They ought to stop me coming in again. You mad? You thought we were synonyms? Too bad that's the water you're getting in. You're too fat for the sharks that you're swimming in. Where I'm sitting,
welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive.
We might have to talk more Thunder based on that map that we were talking about during the break.
Boy, you know what? Let's save that for tomorrow, because
because we can talk NBA bubble. as well.
And let's talk Tom with it too. Let's get him involved.
Tom won't care. Tom will be like, those slappies.
Well, then he just wanted to be able to talk for that time. Well, because we're going to discuss it, because the Barstool Sports put out a map of favorite teams per state.
Laughable. And
cited their sources on there and everything, and it's just like, okay, what? We both had issues with states surrounding this area, including Oklahoma. I was like, well, and that's our perfect teaser for talking about it tomorrow. It's going to be very interesting because it's crazy dumb. Okay, real quick. Dak Prescott. Is he going to get a deal or not? They have to have it done by tomorrow.
No.
Okay.
No, because here's the thing: they can actually, I believe, with him, they can sign him to the or slap the tag on him again.
Yeah, they have the tender on him now, which he would make $31 million under. The issue has been he wants less years than what they apparently offered. That 5 years. He doesn't want to get 5 years with the Cowboys, not be able to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. So at the same time, is he going to either settle for that, or do the Cowboys bend and go 4 years?
And that's the interesting thing now for the Cowboys is you're looking at it and saying the best quarterback in the league wants to stick with his franchise for 10 years. Why don't you want to stick with us for 6?
Well, and our response would be that quarterback has had early success. Dak Prescott's success has had a ceiling already. Yeah. And Patrick Mahomes hasn't.
Right, but again, that argues for the side of the Cowboys, and that's why I think ultimately that he doesn't want to sign with Cowboys. I really, that's at this point, like, That's what I assume with Dak is he doesn't want to be a Cowboy for life.
No, I don't think so either. I think he would, if he could finesse 4 years, okay, and a lot of money would come with it, and then take it and still have the opportunity to sign later in his career and finish out somewhere else. I don't see that as a surprise at all.
Yeah, I think it's a case where he was like, let's rob Jerry Jones blind like everyone does.
Really, honestly.
And then I'll go somewhere else when the contract's over, and I'm I'm no better than Chase Daniel, and then I can just go be a backup somewhere.
And I think this year is going to be a big telling year. Okay, because if Dak Prescott signs or is kept under that franchise tender and makes $31 million. Then on top of that, if they don't have the success, which they probably should this year with the team that they have and the new coach that they have, how much more is that like in Dak's mind? Like, if I'm not going to succeed now, like I got to get out of here.
Well, I think it's the other way around.
Really?
I think it's Cowboys who say, let's part ways.
They look at him and they say, we just can't get it done with you.
Yeah, because that's the danger that Dak's dealing with right now if he doesn't sign long-term with them, is McCarthy's a guy who's going to come in and say, I didn't draft him. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything for us. He hasn't done anything before I came in. Let's start looking for a quarterback that I think can actually win with us.
I think it has potential to be a messy mutual party.
Oh, yeah.
In a way. A very messy one. This stat is nuts, okay? People probably hear this for the first time in a lot of ways unless they've done the research. In his first 4 years in the league, guess how much money he has made? $2.7 million. Okay? That's it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it, too, and I've seen this argument made, I completely agree, that when it comes to the money that he might be getting, how much of that is him saying, you guys owe me for what I didn't get for these first 4 years?
No,
okay?
I think that's fair, but at the same time, what did he get them in those years?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they'll counter with. They'll be, but then he'll be like,
no playoff appearance last year. What I think he's won one playoff game is all.
Yeah, 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, whatever it is in the playoffs. But then it's like, really though? Look at all the quarterbacks and the money they're making. He made 2.7 over 4 years.
Yeah,
that's robbery. I mean, I don't care what quarter. I mean, Cam Newton's coming in for a year for under $2 million.
Yeah,
and that's even pretty low. So that's what's crazy about football money sometimes. Yeah, and these rookie contracts too. Is that, and then I love the list I saw today of the basically robbing blind some of these players for their, and Mahomes was still on it because of the few years he has left.
Right.
George Kittle is severely underpaid for what he's done. In the NFL, those deals that are being structured initially, you're not getting a ton of money.
Yeah, I wonder if the CBA, which I think is coming up soon, if they don't consider, allowing, hey, you can start restructuring before, because I think right now it's you have to play 3 of your 4 years on your rookie contract before you can restructure.
I believe that's right, yeah.
So again, if you want to start, and I think they're eventually going to have to make a decision like that because you are starting to see a drop off in participation at the younger levels because of the injury opportunities when it comes to that sport. So you're going to have to start possibly shelling out your MLB money, your NBA money. Otherwise, you're going to start losing them at a younger age because they're like, well, I'm not getting guaranteed money there. I can get guaranteed money if I'm a multi-sport athlete and go play somewhere else.
Because let's be honest, for a long time, a lot of players in the NFL have been gouged for a very violent sport, right? They've given up a lot more or risked a lot more for not a lot of money, let's be honest, for a lot of these guys. So I understand it completely. It's going to do it for us. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. We'll be back tomorrow with much more. Tom Dorado will be on with us tomorrow, and at 4:30 he'll have Zach Allen to Where Are They Now, so make sure you stay tuned for that. For Jason Elmquist, I'm Patrick Wheeler.